Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum and I am here today at the Solomon Islands War Memorial Museum on Guadalcanal in the capital, Honiara. And this is an amazing collection of recovered battlefield items from all over Guadalcanal. We're used to seeing museums that are, pristine examples of things that survived, mostly because a lot of that stuff never went onto the battlefield. This museum, which we're going to take a look through in just a moment, is entirely artifacts that were recovered from the battlefield in the decades after the fighting here on Guadalcanal. And there's a tremendous amount of war detritus still here on the island. And the museum here is collecting new items literally every day from local islanders who find them out in the bush. The vegetation is so thick in much of the jungle here that you can walk 2 feet away from a heavy machine gun on a tripod and not recognize it. And like I said, so stuff is still being discovered every single day. So the majority of the things in here are on display right now are Japanese. There's a little bit of American stuff, but much more Japanese. So let's take a look through and get an idea of some of the things that the Japanese had and were using on Guadalcanal, because there's some stuff here that you probably didn't expect you'd see on Guadalcanal. All right, just starting kind of randomly at one end. We have, well, this will give you an idea for the variety of things that are recovered off a battlefield, because the museum here is interested in everything from the war, not just weapons. So we have, for example, bottles. There's a lot of Coke bottles in there from the Marines. There are American beer bottles, medicine bottles, all sorts of different glassware. We have things like the remnants of mortar bombs, remnants of rifle grenades there, canteens, kitchenware, bladed stuff, bolos, shell casings from all manner of different artillery pieces. There's a bunch more shell casings. One of the really interesting things that I discovered here that I hadn't realized is we knew the Marine Corps was using 1903 Springfield rifles. I didn't realize they were still using the World War I era V-B rifle grenades with cup launchers. So this is a copy of the French World War I V-B grenade. We used them ourselves, the Army and the Marine Corps in World War I, and the Marines brought them over here to Guadalcanal to use, while they were still using 03 Springfields. That's a surviving canister round, the projectile end of a canister round for a 37 millimeter gun. Much of the rest of this here is artillery brass. 30-06 Lewis gun drums. So a bunch of these were recovered from an ammo depot area. And you can see that's 30 US. Those are not Japanese or British Lewis guns. Those are US caliber Lewis gun pans. There's so much stuff here. You can just sit and look forever at one of these tables and see more and more. A variety of handguns. So we have the typical stuff you would expect. We have American 1917 revolvers, Japanese Nambu pistols, 1911s. But then there's an interesting variety of things you might not expect. Spanish revolvers. This is the remains of someone's 5mm little velo dog. This would have been someone's personal gun that they brought to the battle. Honestly, could be American or Japanese. Someone just bought that and kept it as a personal backup piece. We've got the Spanish pocket pistol, helmets, bayonets, Arasaka action, remains of an M1 carbine. Here's another interesting bit. 1918 trench knives, again, originally issued by the US in World War I. These were reissued to the Marines, and they did some interesting things. So this one, for example, has had this side of the guard cut down, and that was so that it could fit in a scabbard and hang nice and close on the body, where the standard had a brass guard on both sides. This one has had the barrel replaced by the tip of an American bayonet blade. That's really cool. We've got all sorts of just small personal items here. Far too much to really go through. So let's move on to some of the firearms. This is the condition that most stuff is recovered. Of course, the wood has rotted away, generally a long time ago. We have a mixture of Type 99 and Type 38 Arasakas. Those are the long rifles. There are also carbines. Let's see, there's an example of a 38 carbine, a couple of 38 carbines. We have the strips from Type 92 heavy machine guns. Got a variety of stuff down here. There's a Nambu light machine, well, two Nambu light machine guns, an American Thompson. We have a Ricing. Now here's an interesting one. That is a Czech ZB-26. How on earth did a ZB-26 get onto Guadalcanal? Well, the mystery deepens a bit when we see some things like that, or that. We have a couple of the carbine versions over here. These are Dutch Mannlichers, and they came from the Dutch East Indies Army. One of the Japanese reinforcing units that came onto Guadalcanal in early or mid-September 1942, basically in response to the initial U.S. victories, was a unit that had previously been in the Dutch East Indies. They had captured a lot of Dutch weaponry, and they were reusing it. So we'll see some other Dutch stuff in a couple of minutes, but they brought with them ZB-26s and Dutch Mannlichers. Interestingly, there are two Vickers-Berthier magazines in this museum, and I'm not really sure where those came from. The Ricings, of course. There's another Ricing down there. By the way, the rumor that the U.S. Marines were ordered to throw their Ricings in the river is in fact completely true. Ricings here are typically, most often, recovered from rivers. So here we have a wall of bayonets, assorted handguns as well. So up at the top there, we have a Japanese Type 26 revolver, some American revolvers, things like that guy that would have been personal guns that were brought, a little hammerless top break, the sort of thing you buy and bring with you and keep in your pack or in your pocket as a last-ditch personal weapon. There are two Lugers here, and what's really cool is, although they're both in really poor condition, you can tell that is a Dutch East Indies Army Luger, and the brass unit tags that they put on them survive even when the gun is buried and the rest of it is completely rotted away. So some more Nambus, examples here of Nambus with the magazines and the cartridges still in them. Let's see, our other Luger is down here. That one's also Dutch, but the brass tag's a little more damaged. A couple of C96s, a number of FN 1910 pistols. These are popular guns. I know Japanese pilots used those. Japanese officers had to buy their own guns, so some of things like this could very well be Japanese personal purchased officers' guns. A number of Dutch colonial revolvers. That's someone's personal revolver. This one's kind of interesting. That's a Webley, a little civilian 38 caliber top break Webley. Let's see, let's keep going over here. We've got another Ricing there. This is the sort of assorted detritus that you find. So Type 99 Nambu magazines. We've got magazines for Thompsons and Ricings. This one, single feed, that's a 20 round Ricing magazine. We've got loading tools for the Japanese Nambu machine guns. We've got dishware, handles for a bunch more of the trench knives. Lots more glassware and such. Let's continue. The Japanese used more than a few heavy machine guns. These are called woodpeckers, Type 92s. They're a copy of a Hotchkiss gun, essentially. Thing weighs like 150 pounds with its complete tripod. It was a slow-firing gun, and it was an emplaced heavy machine gun for the Japanese. Strip-fed, like a Hotchkiss. You can see there, this one's set up with a strip in it. The Americans, of course, used BARs. We've got aircraft 50 cals there, helmets, canteens, another BAR there, another Nambu light machine gun. I should say that BAR with the bipod was found literally just a couple of months ago in that condition, out in the jungle. The stuff is still out there, surviving. Well, surviving to some extent. It's still out there. There's a Nambu light machine gun optic. Pretty cool. And that says something about combat right there. A bullet hole right through a Nambu light machine gun magazine. Knee mortars, both the standard, the more common late knee mortar, And they found one of these earlier knee mortars. That one's in fantastic condition. That's really cool. Let's see, continuing on down. This is the 20mm cannon that was mounted in the nose of a P-38 Lightning. They found a Lightning off in, crashed into a swamp here. We've got a Japanese Vickers gun there, aircraft Vickers gun. You can see this is the big extra charging handle so that a pilot can recharge the gun, and that's the firing synchronizer gear right there. Now, let's see, I told you we'd see some more interesting Dutch guns, so let's go past some helmets here. There's another Type 92 Heavy, and then here's a fascinating thing to find on Guadalcanal, a little short-barreled Madsen light machine gun. And this is another gun that was taken from the Dutch East Indies Army. In fact, the Dutch East Indies had a very distinctive Madsen gun that they used that had a very short barrel. That's the whole thing. There's nothing rusted off the end of the barrel. And it had a very long bipod. So you can see it on this side. The bipod, this unscrews, loosens, and the bipod extends. So the bipod is like 3 feet long when it's fully extended. And that was to allow the gun to be used in the really tall grass of the Dutch East Indies Islands. So again, this was a Japanese reinforcing unit that came to Guadalcanal and brought a bunch of Dutch guns. There are 2 of these Madsens in the museum. There's another 50 cal, aircraft 50. Boots, even some leather goods survive out in the jungle quite remarkably. Bayonets, all manner of interesting artifacts from the war. Lots of UXO. So a lot of this stuff, well, everything in here has been deactivated. The explosives have been removed and it's safe. But out in the field, that's not how it's always found. There's still, the official EOD teams are still destroying something on the order of 10 tons of UXO every year. So anyway, a very cool chance to take a look at a private museum here on Guadalcanal to get an idea of exactly what sort of stuff is still out in the jungle waiting to be found, and in fact being found every day. Oh, there you go, a couple of Japanese samurai style officers' swords. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this look at Guadalcanal. Thanks for watching.